Okay, we're going to get started here. I have my footage brought into a new Fusion composition. This is only about 48 frames long. So yeah, we're going to look at this signage here, and what we're going to do is we're going to figure out a way to clean it up. Let's say we wanted to use the shot in the edit. We've been told to remove all the damage that's in the sign. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a Planar Tracker. I'm going to scrub through and look for the best frame. I'm going to start at the very front, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle around our whole sign. And just kind of line it up with the edges so that it tries to track the whole entire sign. Make sure we set our reference down to 0, and we can leave all these the same, and we're going to track forward. Perfect, nice and quick. Alright, so the next thing you do is select your plane tracker, go to track, and set it to steady. And then make sure your steady time is set to 0 where we started tracking from. So now if we hit play, the whole entire sign is now stabilized. So if I put my mouse over certain parts of it, it's not going to move at all like it was before. So this is a perfect building point off of any of our paint out or track work that we would normally be doing. Okay, so now that we have our footage all tracked and stabilized perfect, the next thing we can do is we're going to start getting rid of this damage, but we can do this with a paint node inside of Fusion, but I find that it can take you quite a while. It's a lot more manual work. A more efficient route is to take a still frame from your shot, and we're going to send it out to Photoshop. So what we're going to do is make sure we go onto the very first frame where we have our whole footage aligned. We're going to right click and click on Save Image. And I just named this something with the footage, and I name it with a little tag for Photoshop, PS. So I've already created that here. Okay, so inside Photoshop, we've got our still frame here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the spot healing brush. Select your layer here. We're going to create a new layer, and then make sure content aware fill or content aware is set up over here and sample all layers. If you have a tablet, this will really help you out. I'm using a mouse, and you should be able to be just fine with a mouse. So this is where the tedious part comes in, but we get very good results being in Photoshop. So we're just going to pick a size of our brush, and we're hitting the brackets for larger or smaller brush sizes. And then we're just swiping over areas to paint out the damage. And what I'm doing is I'm going after more of the spots first. Anything that's kind of like a speck or a dot, those are a little easier to knock out first, and then it kind of gives you more of a blank canvas that the brush can recognize when you take out longer strokes like these. Because something that's going to happen here is if we start trying to take out these kind of bigger chunks all in one swipe, it's going to introduce other stuff like this, and then you'll end up kind of chasing your tail trying to clean stuff up. So I find it a little bit easier to just go through and just work on the spots. Something that just takes a click to kind of knock out. And then holding spacebar and clicking around lets you drag around your image. Yeah, a lot of this is just super tedious work, but the healing brush is really doing a lot of work for us, being able to use the content aware tool to fill in the spots. If we were doing the clone brush either in here or even inside of Fusion, we'll find ourselves having a little more a rougher time, because a lot of this is uneven green swatches, right? So we kind of have a shadow coming across here and some light over here, but then on top of that we also have a lot of these kind of scraping, like brushed paint pattern where it looks like someone tried to clean this up. And if we were trying to go over here and clone this, what we'll run into is trying to sample something off to the side, and then as you kind of paint in, you end up painting in more of this mess, and it just ends up being a little more inconsistent, and then you can see more of the pattern kind of getting duplicated there. So yeah, I start with the spot healing set to content aware for some better results. I'm not going to make you watch all of it, but I'm just showing you kind of how I work my way around the frame. I kind of still keep knocking out those really easy dots. I try not to worry about some of these ones over here, like on the edges of the lettering, because it's not always going to create a perfect line. It kind of takes that little divot out. And what we could do is when we're done with the massive first haul of cleanup, we can go back and kind of spot touch those manually. But for now, I'm just going to keep going after these kind of small approachable pieces. And then something like this that crosses over the line here. I'm going to follow this up until the edge and then drop it. And then we might get away with doing something like that. Perfect. And then it'll keep continuing on the line because it has other parts of this line that it can source from. You don't always want to try to do everything in one massive stroke. You kind of have to think of it in segments so that it's aware of what it's trying to take away. Always nice to go back out to get your frame full size, and we can turn our layer on and off here. And you're really getting an idea of how much work you've put in so far. We'll keep working on these bigger chunks now, and you'll start looking really impressive once you can on off and have everything disappear at once. That was a good example right there of how approaching it a couple different ways will help you get to the more desired outcome. You just have to find the right way to approach it for the content aware to kind of understand what you're trying to remove and what you're trying to keep. Going at it piece by piece, I was able to keep telling it that it was a straight line here and it was a straight line here. And that's kind of the way you have to go when you're dealing with more AI fueled tools. Okay, so let's look at what we've done so far. If we turn the layer on and off, we can see all the work that we've done. And it's pretty impressive how much cleaner it looks just pulling off the damage. We have a couple more pieces in here that we can go in and spot touch that we know is just going to be too close to the text, like right here, and maybe we can fix up some of these imperfections over here. So we can name this layer Healing Brush. And then if we wanted to, we can create a new layer here, call it Clone, and then we can still keep things fairly separate if we need to start over. Go over to the Clone Stamp tool and make sure Sample All Layers is selected. And then we can go in here and see what we can do. Here's a section. I'm going to hold Alt and click where I want to source from and just paint my way in there. Same thing, hold Alt. Just do real subtle pieces here. Alt, make a smaller brush just to create some separation. That doesn't quite look right, so we'll source from a new spot. And with this, you just keep sourcing from any little angle that'll help you, and you can even source back in, get some of this yellow back in here. Doesn't take much, just got to do a little bit, just so that when we zoom back out, it doesn't look like a line dragged through. Okay, we're in a pretty good spot here. We can go down here and fix up these little pieces. I think we can grab this, and right here, steal some more yellow. Cool, okay. All right, so now we have our clone layer, knocking out the more manual work, and then we have our healing brush. I took out basically all of the actual damage in this thing. So something I like to do, so I select, hold shift, click your first layer, and then hold shift and hit the last layer. It'll select all your layers. Control J will duplicate them. And then I will take these three and hit Control G, group them, call it original. So now we have all our original work. Turn the eyeball off on that one. And then we can take the top three, right click, merge the layers. So now we just have one layer with all our work. And then if we wanted to, we can still go back in and do edits. So on the merged layer here, we can go over to the subject select tool, the object selection tool, and it should be smart enough, yep, to grab this here. Because all we really care about is a sign. We don't need anything else on the outside of it. So once you have your selection made, go down here and click on your layer mask, and that'll cut it out. So now you have a perfect alpha of just your sign. Gonna save this. All right, and then do File, Export. Just do quick export of PNG. And then you can keep the name the same. Clean up plate. Save. Okay, back over in Fusion now. We still have our footage piped into the Planar Tracker, and the Planar Tracker has been stabilized. So now we can go and just drag in our new PNG we just created that has all the paint out work on it. And go over to your Planar Tracker and create a merge node. And then we're just gonna drag this over the top of the merge node, look at that in the viewer, and it dropped it out perfectly right away. And since we stabilized everything, and then did all of our work on the first frame of where we started to stabilize, everything will be stabilized to the very first. So since dropping this image in, it'll just stick perfectly. So the very next thing we want to do now, and if I kind of turn the opacity down, you can see that it's really just slapping this right on top. And since the track works so well, it looks almost pixel perfect. Okay, so with our stabilized footage, we can just create a matte control going down after the merge. And then we're gonna take the original picture that has our alpha in it, and we're gonna pipe it in holding Alt on the matte control, and when you let go, you're going to select garbage matte. And then with matte control selected, go to garbage matte and invert it. So now if we look at our matte control, it should look exactly the same as our PNG. So now when we take our Planar Tracker and copy it and paste it below, we'll take the matte control, drag it into the Planar Tracker, and then hit the checkbox for Invert Steady Transform. So now if we look at our Planar Tracker and hit play, it'll add the camera movement back on that we originally stabilized out of. And so now the last little thing we have to do here is create a new merge node and bring your original footage into it, and then add this on top of the foreground. And so now we have your whole composite created. So now if we look at this here and create an underlay, rename this, call this paint out. So all your work for that one job here is your footage, and then here's your final, and then here's the paint outs. So if we watch this through now, it's just missing one last thing, and if we zoom in here, you'll see it's just too perfect, right? Like, I don't think there's enough movement to really add motion blur, but if we look at our original footage here, you can just see the grain dancing and speckled, and at this stage you see the real like compression moving across it. So we just need to work on getting that in here. So right after our matte control, we will add a film grain, and you can see that's quite too heavy, but I'm just going to bring the strength down till it's pretty low. We just want to see some dancing, because grain is usually in the darker aspects of your footage, and this is shot in pure daylight, so we're not going to see a ton, but you do want to see some dancing there when we zoom in. So if we go to original footage, looks quite a bit busier. We could probably bring our strength a little bit back up. That looks good. And then when you zoom out, it shouldn't look like you did anything at all, honestly. That's the goal. I'd say this looks like a pretty solid, successful composite here. I think this is one of the shots that you can execute really cleanly. No one will ever know you did any work in it at all, and that's the goal here. So quick little run through of our nodes here. We have our original image plates piped into a planar tracker that we started tracking on the very first frame, and then set it to steady so that it locks down what we tracked. And then we sent the very first frame of the shot to Photoshop, where we cleaned everything up using the healing brush and the cloning brush. And then we merged it back over our original footage. We used a matte control to reduce it down to just the sign. We added a little bit of film grain to make it look not so perfect. And then we took our planar tracker and duplicated it, and then checked the box for Invert Steady Transform. And we merged it back over our original footage. Last thing we need to do is just create a quick little saver node. And then you can save this as any format. I recommend an image sequence of some type. So we can just keep this as a PNG. For now, I'm going to just make it an MOV. And then hit save. So this is our saver down here, and go to format. I just want to keep this in H.264. Turn the quality up, and then hit render.